In a world where it gets cold and dark, even animals are forced to experience the cruelty of abandonment. Some of these animals resigned to a harsh fate until someone came along to save the day. Let us explore the heart-moving stories of these desperate animals who found a second chance at happiness after experiencing the worst. But is it possible that these animals may have survived on their own without help? Like this puppy, found drifting away and in desperate need for help. This man saw the poor puppy and knew he had to save him fast. So he used a container to help the puppy out of the water and into a safe place. Upon getting home, the puppy was cleaned up by getting a warm bath. The caregiver also fed it some nice milk as it sucked with so much joy. He got plenty of rest and soon started to play around the house and accompany its owner outdoors. Looking at this situation, there's a slim chance this puppy would have survived on its own had it not been rescued from the water. But this raccoon was in greater trouble after having its leg caught in a foothold trap. The raccoon was lucky to have been found by a team of wildlife experts who immediately rescued it and took it to a veterinary facility. The experts started treatment on him immediately as he was discovered to have sustained a critical injury to his foot because of the trap. The wounded raccoon could be nothing short of grateful to still be alive after such a painful experience. The wildlife experts gave him a new home in their facility until he was ready to go back to his natural home. Speaking of natural homes, you might wonder how this parrot got itself stuck in the trash in the first place. Could someone have actually dumped it there, or he got there by accident? Whatever happened, he was lucky to find someone who took pity on him and got him out of that place. The feathered guy was excited to be indoors, especially when the man brought it some food. But it seemed like his enthusiasm was short-lived because he had an injured wing which made him very chill and cooperative. But with a continuous show of love and affection, the bird started to get better and even became comfortable having proper water baths. And by the time his wing was healed, he had found a happy home with an owner that loved him very much and was willing to take care of him for life. Now that parrot might literally be the happiest bird on the planet, but compared to this cat after getting rescued from death, the gratitude would be incomparable. He was found covered in flies and holding on for dear life. As soon as he responded to the lady's curiosity with a weak sound, the lady took him home and tried to get him cleaned up first. He was covered in dirt and there were maggots on his back as well. It was obvious that this cat was uncomfortable and very weak because he couldn't even scratch them off him. He was also unable to eat until a couple of minutes later when a pet shop owner offered assistance. He soon regained some strength and was driven to the hospital to get checked by a vet. On getting to the doctor, it was discovered that this cat had little insects burrowing into his skin. The cat was also constantly twitching in his arms and legs, and that made the doctor curious about what's wrong. An X-ray result showed the cat had sustained multiple fractures in his bones. No wonder the poor cat was so uncomfortable and unable to move properly. The doctor got to work and scheduled the cat for surgery. At this point, some other complications were discovered and its caregiver honestly prayed for a miracle. Whatever happened to that cat must have been really terrible to sustain these kinds of injuries. The cat continued to receive care until the time of its surgery. And just as everyone had hoped, the surgery was successful and he started recovering in due time. By the time the cat was back home, his paws had healed pretty well and he had the strength to eat properly. The owner was very happy to have her cat back to good health as they played together in their home. Who knows? Had that cat spent one more day in the cold and with the flies, we'd probably be hearing a sad story by now. But there are stories of some cutely desperate animals who really just needed someone to love and hold them. Like this raccoon who was found holding onto this boat. This guy found him and decided to take him home with him, as the raccoon looked like he could use a warm bath and a nice meal. This act of kindness made the raccoon fall in love with the man. They went almost everywhere together as he became a part of the man's life. You can see how happy the raccoon is now that he's got a home and a nice human he can call his own. Now, while this raccoon's case was a rather sweet one, this armadillo story would seem to be the sweetest. This weighty boy barely weighed a pound when he was found by his owner. This lady brought him home and cared for him as her newfound pet. But this armadillo was always sick and barely responded to treatment at the time. It seemed like a really hopeless situation, and there was almost nothing his owner could do about it. Until one day, his weight started to increase. This was a long-awaited miracle, and his owner couldn't be any happier. She watched him start to eat more and play around the house like a happy kid. His little mischievous acts kept the house alive as this little guy made his owner happy at all times. Another animal that brought so much joy to his new home is this cub that was found in the woods by a man. This little guy was lost and couldn't find his mother. Crying all around, he caught the attention of this man who decided to take him in after observing and discovering the mother was nowhere to be found. Once the cub got to the house, he had some milk and got everyone attracted to him. He'd playfully suck on the caregiver's fingers and run around trying to get acquainted with his new home. In no time, this cub that was once frail and lonely had become part of a family he had grown to love. With time, he grew to become an amazing wolf and stayed close to his owner always. He got comfortable enough with the family that he didn't find the need to run away or attack them. Having such a happy cub turn into a fine wolf was indeed a wonderful experience for the family. Once they started to love him and treat him as their own, he was bound to be a loving animal that would always be loyal to them. This panther is another example of a wild animal that got just the right amount of love it needed to thrive. It was abandoned and couldn't find its mother when it was discovered by someone. They could have easily left it alone because of its wild nature, but they decided to give it a chance to live despite the facts. Once this panther got home with his new owner, it adjusted well as it fed on nutritious milk and got nice care every day. Eventually, it started to make friends with other animals around and felt at home. This big guy became such a cute panther, and no doubt, his owners were comfortable with him. Although we can't say if his owner will eventually get him back to the wild, this big cat is sure happy to be here and ready to call this home for the rest of his days. This porcupine's case was pretty pathetic, as he was found in a state of sadness. A fire had burned down the place the poor guy called home. He was all alone and dehydrated when he was found. He not only needed shelter, this porcupine also needed some real emotional support. Once he was taken in, the caregivers cared for him as if he was the most special animal present. But he probably was the most special animal after all, considering what he'd gone through with the fire incident. His diet was special because he needed all the strength he could get to be an active porcupine. He was also given treats that he really enjoyed, as he'd usually go calm once he started eating. He played around with his caregivers and made nice friends around the park. His caregivers also seemed to enjoy rubbing his nose, which was the softest and cutest thing around. He also seemed to be comfortable with the activity and took it as something to be enjoyed, perhaps like a type of bonding activity between him and his caregivers. This porcupine was truly happy to have survived the incident and find a new home. And yet sometimes we say home is not a place, but a person. This was the case of these piglets who were shielded from a harsh reality after they lost their mother. This sow developed complications during childbirth and was unable to give birth to all her children alive. Shortly after childbirth, the sow sadly passed away as well, leaving behind a litter of 7 piglets for the farmer. These piglets each fed on 1 ounce of milk every day, and they were fed so well, they didn't really feel the absence of their mother. The farmer was getting them ready to be attached to another sow soon, because even though they could stay in the house and feed on formula, they needed to be outdoors with a mummy pig to care for them properly. In no time, they found the perfect sow, and these piglets continued to grow healthily under the new mom and farmer's supervision. Wasn't it wonderful that these piglets didn't have to feel alone because a nice mummy pig was ready to care for them?
Hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe. See you on the next one.